Thank you very much for that last session. Okay, the next panel is ready. This is the practical path, and we're about to start. So please, would you welcome to the stage Rodrigo Lang, Beatriz Sansais, Ian Glasner, and your moderator, Luke Gbedemah.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Sorry to wrench you away from that conversation with Manuela and Tony. It was fascinating. But hopefully we'll be able to pick up some of the threads that they left, as well as talking about this specific question on, and I'm going to do it. Chris Purse from UBS said something very good, I thought, earlier this morning about looking at AI tooling as the way that you ascend Everest. And I think what he meant was, where do you need to place the traverses, the ladders, the ropes, rather than seeing AI as the mountain itself. It's the kind of approach to getting up the mountain. So I think we're going to talk a bit about where do you place the ladders, what are the most important ones to prioritize, and also I think comment on some of the ideas that have come up already today on the practical side of, in a world where it's impossible to do everything all at once, how do you make decisions about what to do and when? So, we've got three fantastic speakers to help us tackle that, also with three quite different, almost cross-sectional perspectives on the industry and on the challenges that the organizations face when it comes to AI adoption. And I think it'd be great to start with you, Rodrigo, the CEO and co-founder of Samba Nova Systems, to just do a little bit on a topic that's recurred a lot, I think, during the morning, which has been change management. Right. And how can change management, the journey towards better understanding the AI capabilities, feed into the use cases that you might prioritize? Yeah,
I think it's been a great conference. We've heard a lot about what everybody's doing, how people approaching the journey. Couple of things, like Samba Nova, we're a full stack company. We build infrastructure, we build hardware, we build software, we build models, and we have a thesis. Our thesis is that over time, there's going to be a market for certain industries where they view AI as the tool for competitive advantage. There's a lot of conversations about how do I get efficiency and value out of it. We are maniacally focused on how do you give you a differentiated advantage through AI. And our belief is that the way you're going to get differentiated advantage, differentiated value out of Gen AI is to use your private data into these models. Right? So by training your private data into these models, now you create an asset that nobody else has. Somebody else wants to buy it. You can't buy it because it's your data that got trained into it. And the way to do it is you got to do it in a way that's secure, in a way that's private, in a way that you actually understand what it does. Right? And so that's what we're maniacally focused. Now, aside from the fact that you got to hunt down for GPUs, which is the reason why we build our own chips and make it easier for folks, aside from the fact that you have to do all the work that people have talked about when you're choosing which model, and it changes every week, it seems like, right? And so one of the big things that is a challenge for most companies is change management for your org. Right? I know we talk a lot about safety and policies and things that we've got to think about before we start. Well, what's the biggest risk to your journey? The biggest risk to your journey is that people in your organization don't know what to do with it. Mm-hmm. They don't know how to use this. They don't know how to use it properly, right? They're copying and pasting critical information, putting it out into the open domain, right? And so this idea of actually beginning the journey, not just for you, not just for your ML people, not just for your data scientists, but for the whole company. Mm. The idea of beginning the journey for the whole company is incredibly important because the technology is very sophisticated, right? What can it do? What can it not do? What is true? What's not true? What's a hallucination? What's not? I mean, all of those things are true, and yet it's going to take time for your organizations to understand how to use this technology in a productive way, how to create differentiated value, how do I actually build on top of what it has so that I can create more value for my company. And that journey has got to start as soon as possible and not wait for us to figure it all out, and then I drop the bomb on 50, 60, 100,000 people. Go figure this out. That's too much. The journey's got to start, and I think that's the change management idea that that I think the group has been talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe we could turn to you, Beatrice, on that data and AI leader at EY, particularly around their global consulting. I wanted to ask, how do you see that education piece as an important, almost a precursor to deciding which use cases you're going to prioritize, and maybe how those use cases will fit against a broader overarching vision for a company?
Yeah, thanks. Delighted to be here. I love the conference. I love the talk. I love the honesty, the transparency. So let's try to keep with the conversation. Yes. Well, in my role, I help advise clients on their AI strategy and their AI journey. But I'm also responsible for our own EY's own transformation, right? And we have 400,000 employees, and every day someone very smart. Don't get me wrong, very smart that comes with a new use case, right? And when I talk to my clients, like a month after I took on the role, I had more than 1,000 use cases on my desk. It's like, this is not going quite in the right direction. I actually don't like the word use case because somehow it is commoditizing a bit of what is the purpose, what is the goal, where are we trying to achieve, where are we trying to go? And when I talk to my clients, they suffer from kind of the same. It's like, well, maybe it's not 1,000, but it's 700. I heard some of people also talking about that. So I think we have to talk less about use cases, more about value. Value with capital value. So basically what we did was to come with a solution, which is a value accelerator. And that value accelerator is how we are helping with our clients, but also what we apply to ourselves, right? So we don't advise to anything that we haven't applied first to ourselves, kind of at EY, right? As a client zero. And so we took our own strategy, we took our own P&L, we took our own priorities, and we transformed those 1,000 use cases into 8. Then it was a decision about the global executive, which I took to the global executive to sign off. Hey, this is where we're going to be working on. We're going to be focusing. This is the ROI. This is the cost. These are the productivity gains. We have to balance. Do we balance productivity? We balance cost. Do we balance, But let's make the decision. And let's understand what is the impact around EBITDA.
Yeah.
So we signed with a plan. And we are full on execution. We know what to expect. There are some low-hanging fruits. I mean, software, right? And there are initiatives that you get the ROI in the first 6 months. We are saving like 20% of our software engineering cost. Done. But the more disruptive, you need to balance what is short-term, what's long-term. But you need to sign and commit to a plan, because otherwise, if you don't have a North Star as an organization, you will be losing time. And there's always new ideas that will coming. And the problem, again, of all these use cases is stays in the world of ideas. I very little kind of see the ROI returns impact on value and EBITDA.
Ian, we'll turn to you now. I think it'd be great, just with that image of thousands upon thousands of potential use cases piling up on a given desk. I hope there aren't too many people in the audience who have had that experience. But as I said, in this world where you cannot simply do everything all the time, all at once, let's try and get into some of the sort of grist on how do you make those decisions. And it would be great to hear a bit from you about what are the criteria really when you're looking at a use case prior to its conception, really, just when it's an idea, when it's like a potential comment from a business line or a staff member who's on the front line that says, we might have something here. What are the criteria that you start by thinking about your vantage point at HSBC?
Sure. Happy to comment on that, and thank you for having me. First, I'll build on something Rodrigo said about change management and training. I think it's the fundamental to all of this. And I think one thing that I want to stress is, what we're looking at it as is different communities. So we need to train all of the users of Gen AI and traditional artificial intelligence, but we also need to think about how we train our software engineers, how we train our product managers that are designing what the future will look like, how we train executives to figure out what's realistic in the next 3 months to 12 months versus what the North Star should be 2 to 3 years down the road. And so really segmenting our population and what that training looks like is key. When it comes to prioritization, and I think you were kind of getting on the balance of control and innovation and scale and production and focus, and where do you dial in between letting an organization of hundreds of thousands, I think we have that in common, innovate versus channel focused efforts into getting some generative AI use cases to scale that really have that ROI. And look, we've spent today, I think, talking a lot about artificial intelligence. I like to spend my time talking about customer impact and ROI, right? And I think we need to change the narrative to be laser focused on delivering value and not delivering artificial intelligence. It's the value for our customers that really needs to drive us. To go into kind of like the 3 main things that help us prioritize other than that business case and that customer impact in the context of AI. The first one, and we've talked about it a lot today, is all about performance and accuracy. That's the challenge when it comes to generative AI. Unlike traditional AI, which is deterministic and uses math, generative AI uses transformers and sometimes gets it wrong, as we've seen in the press many times. And solving that problem in the context of the use case and prioritizing the use case around something that potentially would be okay from a risk perspective if it were to be wrong 1 in 100, 1 in 1,000 times. The second is all about legal and regulatory compliance. I think everyone in the financial services industry is well acquainted with that challenge. And then the third thing that we really look for to make sure a use case has before we send it for prioritization is what the Monetary Authority of Singapore, the MAS, I think they were mentioned earlier, has called the FEAT principles, F-E-A-T, fairness, ethics, accountability, and transparency. And so between getting the accuracy and the regulatory and legal piece and the FEAT principles sorted, you can create a nice framework for delivering really, really nice business value.
Yeah. It was so interesting to hear Tony sitting here a moment ago talking about that kind of threshold event moving from BC to AD. Rodrigo, do you find that the kind of last, I don't know whether it's the last 6 months, 12 months, 18 months or so, this moment that we're in, has really dialed up the pressure on organizations like yours to be able to express how you're going to hit those 3 things, help organizations to communicate accuracy, in a business case, the compliance side, and then also that fairness, ethics, accountability, transparency.
I mean, for sure. I think we're an impatient world. We want to see the use cases deliver value and deliver value quickly. I'll say something that's perhaps slightly controversial. I do think that use cases are important and delivering value is important. Also, I mean, look, we're a core tech company. We're building infrastructure for the future. And I'll do the parallel for the internet. If we thought that the internet was your home page, your www web page, and you're thinking about how do I actually create value out of a home page, it's quite different from laying down your global network so every employee in your company is connected to everybody and every task that they do is no longer through paper and through a global internet, right? So my belief is we're still in the phase of building infrastructure. I don't believe that we've completed that infrastructure for the companies, right? Today, we're using rental, like using a ChatGPT or using somebody's rental model. I still believe that there is a large focus that every enterprise should think about as far as have you laid down the foundation, your long-term foundation for your AI infrastructure.
And what are the ingredients of that, as you say it?
So I think it's going to be about your data. How do you actually include your data into these models so you can actually leverage that? Today, for most organizations, especially in the financial industry, your data is your most valuable asset and you're under-leveraging it. Frankly, you don't really know what it says. Small groups may know what small amounts of data say, but you don't really know what globally what all your data actually says and what you can actually leverage. And so for me to come in and say your data will generate this value, I don't know because you don't know what it says, right? And so our belief is, one, you got to get access to all your data in a way that's easily accessible, in a way that we've done it with ChatGPT with the global data, we need to expose all your private data into a way that your team and your people can start deriving value out of it. I think the second thing is the accuracy level of these models got to shoot way up. As much as we're proud of the improvements in hallucinations for GPT-4 and going to GPT-5, it is still far, far away from being able to do the things that we wanted to do at the enterprise level. So accuracy is the next thing. And then ultimately, I think you got to deploy in scale. I think it's one thing to do in the lab for 2 or 3 people to kick the tires, maybe do a few easy use cases. Now let me open it up to 400,000 people using every single day for everything that they want to do because they want to throw away the keyboard. Everything they want to do, I just want to talk to the model, now go fetch the data from the database for me, and go and create the email for me, and interconnect all of this information that was generated from this thing and drive action. Well, that's at scale, and so finding a way to create infrastructure that allows you to do those things at scale, securely, privately, that allows you to then generate value, I think that's a journey. I don't think we're there today to be able to say, do you have value or not? I still think we're laying down networks inside companies. And so if you aren't doing that, at least as part of your AI journey, I think it's too early. It's too early to not be doing that.
I'd be curious to ask you, Beatrice, of those thousands that you whittled down to just 8, I think you said it was, what was the blend amongst those of ones that use cases, I know you don't like the term, but those items that boil down to the sort of thing that Rodrigo's describing, infrastructural, foundational types of, I guess, attributes that you're building into the business, and how many more of those 8 are kind of further down the value chain, as you saw it, closer to the customer or closer to the end user within your organization?
The first, I couldn't agree more with you, Rodrigo. It's early days. Having that foundational infrastructure architecture is of the essence. Not only a platform and the data layer, and there's a lot about the AI-ready data, what that means, but we also see kind of a knowledge layer. And knowledge becoming almost as important as data. That knowledge engineering, I suspect like in less than 2 years, every company will have a chief knowledge officer, because how you curate, how you capture the knowledge, how you curate your knowledge, how you incentivize kind of that knowledge, how you maintain knowledge. There's a lot of governance. We talk about data governance. We talk less about the governance of knowledge, which at the end of the day is the ultimate piece that, it feeds these kind of LLMs, of this intelligence, especially when it will come, hopefully in a few years, to AGI. That piece of knowledge will become kind of essential. So I think in terms of building blocks, at least in our own journey as well, we built a confidence index. And if you think about, I think it's health and financial services count 40% of the global GDP. And kind of is this the probabilistic nature of this technology, which is still locking a lot of kind of the use cases. So basically, what can you do today to unlock as much as possible in terms of you managing, you're having control of the risk tolerance for every single application. So the confidence index is for us, and again, it's something we are applying to our own internal policies. All our applications come attached with a confidence index, where we measure what is the accountability. We measure the reliability, accuracy, transparency, fairness, sustainability. And for each of kind of these 7 measures, for each application, we can visualize how the application scores, and it's a quantitative methodology, it's a quantitative score through a number of measures. So, we somehow, for a number type of solutions or applications, we might have more risk tolerance on some indicators, but for others less. But at least it's under control.
Yeah, and I'd be interested to know if that approach chimes with what you see or oversee at HSBC in terms of, pump priming your prioritization process. I won't try and say that fast again. Are you looking at similar things, i.e. ongoing measurement of existing and potential use cases that you can then sort of grade through time?
Yeah, I heard a lot of overlapping
overlapping
words there. look, first I'll echo, I think what both of you have said around data. I think we've been saying for 2 decades now that data is the new oil, and that's only becoming more true. It's also worth saying that I think initially I saw many in the industry and outside the industry think that generative AI might be a replacement for bad data. It is not, and I think we all know that now. Instead, data is a part of that prioritization process. Where do we feel comfortable and confident in quality data is directly tied to where we feel we can implement Gen AI. I also think that while laying down the infrastructure is really important, and we still are in the early days of this, the devil in the detail is actually in the use case, right? And some use cases are going to be 2027 use cases, and some have the potential to land last month or next month. And the trend that we're seeing get across all of our different well-built governance processes and other things that help make sure that we're delivering responsible AI are things like making sure that we not only have a human in the loop, but actually have what we're deeming an expert in the loop. When you think about the last time you downloaded an application on your cell phone, and it asks you to agree to the terms and conditions. You're the human in the loop, but what do? You scroll down as fast as you possibly can, and you press that agree button without reading a single word on the page. And when we're delivering generative AI to colleagues to help our clients on different banking journeys, we can't have them scrolling to the bottom and clicking the agree button. We need to be building in controls and mechanisms to make sure that you're actually an expert in the loop, and you're given the tools to challenge the content coming from the AI. Will this potentially shift over time? Absolutely. But if we're realistic about the use cases that we're going to be able to deliver in 2024 and 2025, we need to be thinking about those controls. A phenomenal example that I saw of that is, and I won't go into the specifics of the use case, but if you think about delivering a summarization piece to an employee, what we've built in is the ability to actually hover over different data points. And when you hover over a data point, up pops open the PDF that the data point has come from. So that's using retrieval augmented generation. And the user then has the very easy time to be able to look at the generated content and compare it to the source PDF, right? So having that expert in the loop is absolutely key. And now when you think about like what is a human capable of, the more narrow the use case, the more experts you can have that realistically can challenge the output. When you start to deliver general chatbots that can effectively do something similar to Google, there's no way to deliver an expert on the loop against Google.com, but when you start to embed it into a specific process, maybe even consider fixing the prompt so you're not exposing that to the user in certain instances where it's possible, you really, I think, will see the volume, and again, this is for 24 and 25, start to come out into that scaled production where we can see the benefit. So it's exciting.
There's a real overlap, I think, in what you're describing also with Rodrigo a moment ago, your description of smaller or more specific environments in which there's been a lot of fine-tuning on a corpus of data that's very specific to your organization, where you have a system that is essentially an expert, and then you have an expert human who's able to intervene in that when necessary. I wanted to broaden out a little bit to this question of, we heard Zachary Anderson talk about it in NatWest this morning, the kind of cost sweet spot, wherein you're looking at a potential use case that is not only really exciting from a business value point of view, like you've described, or indeed from the FEAT principles or some variant of them, but it's also really exciting from a cost perspective. You think you can get a lot of value for a limited and high feasibility approach. What do you see in your remit in terms of driving those, identifying and then driving those type of sort of sweet spot applications?
What we're seeing is that, look, especially for banks, the highest value things you can do with AI are the stuff that makes your hair stand up. It's the scariest stuff where if you get it wrong, the penalty is extremely high, right? And you're not sure if you're going to get it right. If you do those three things, that's the highest ROI. The problem is I don't know how to do that, right? I don't know how to do that. But here's the journey that, again, I go back to tell you, where are we going with this? Our fundamental belief is that the economics of AI today are set by a few vendors that are out there doing this today, right? Universal agreement, if you want accuracy, of which most of us here want the models to be more accurate, fine-tuning a model is absolutely the best way to drive accuracy. The question today is it worth it? Because I got to spend more money to fine-tune. I got to spend more effort to clean the data. But is it worth it? Absolutely worth it. And so one of the things we talk about is if the economics was different, and why at SambaNova we build our own chips, because we let people fine-tune indefinitely, just unlimited fine-tuning. Why? Because we believe that it drives higher accuracy, and once you drive the higher accuracy, opens doors to those high-value use cases. And so the sweet spot today is in this kind of funny thing. It's not a linear curve. If I spend $1, I get $1 plus of value, $2, $2 worth. It's not like that. I think the value is, you're sitting here, should I do, should I not do, because I got to spend $10 to get $1 value. Is it worth doing? Well, at some point, you spend $10 or maybe $100, you get $10,000 of value. We just haven't gotten there because the infrastructure that it takes to lay that down, for you to actually turn your private data into your private model, for you to fine-tune constantly without having to pay more money to fine-tune, to drive those use cases so that you can actually take those really, really hard compliance use cases. Like, think about the hundreds of pages that your people are doing every day, generating hundreds of pages because of some event that happened in some particular location where now the regulators want to understand what happened. Right? And so think of that's an incredibly time-consuming thing, which is error-prone because you got hundreds of people actually writing by hand. It's not easy to verify. Right? All of those. So you want to get AI, I'm talking about practical, not the AGI, but the practical way to that really high-value place, where you still have a human that's going to review it, but you took the big part, the big effort, where hundreds of people's worth of effort got saved and removed because AI was able to produce a result you trusted. We're not there yet, but that's the journey. That's when you get to this value proposition. That's not, I spend $10 to get $1 of value, but I spent $100 and got $10,000 of value.
I want to turn to the question of how you can identify use cases that are going to scale, but basically for exactly that point. You know, the real value unlocks come at high scale into enormous organizations. I think you will think a lot about scale. Maybe we'll start with you, Beatrice. When you go through I guess it would be the diagnostics for your confidence index, and you look at the various use cases that are there being measured, being mapped, being compared to one another, what are you looking for when you look for scalability? What are the kind of attributes? What are the things that get you most excited when you're looking at that confidence index?
Well, accuracy, it's extremely, but it depends actually on the application of kind of the use case. I mean, typically where we see now banks at the moment, I think there's a world around back office optimization, back office kind of a transformation. That's almost like a whole new world, a world where is that kind of cost and productivity out there what you're looking for, right? So basically you'll be looking at how best can I apply agents, right, to, again, not only automate a task. By automating a task, you can, optimize 10%, and it's fine, of the cost cut, but can you reimagine that task? Think that, this technology, this is the first technology after kind of the Industrial Revolution that is not workflow-based. It's not process-based. So to produce an outcome, you don't necessarily need to follow a process, right? This technology is objective-based. You put a goal, this is what I want to achieve. That's why we are talking about guardrails,
generative AI,
guardrails, etc. Because it's a technology that goes really to achieve a goal, right? So obviously you need to put these kind of guardrails. But that is when you rethink with that fundamental kind of new design principle, you're not looking at the 10% efficiency. You're not looking at automating an existing process, but at rethinking an outcome, not a process, but an outcome itself. So the back office in banking is huge, and operations kind of is huge, and there's kind of a world. Then what we see is a lot about the customer service. customer service support. There's a lot of activity around, contact centers, transparency. Again, I think you need confidence. That's why almost for us, almost any solution that we're looking at scaling, we need to have a confidence index with high score. Otherwise, it will block a lot of the application at scale. When it comes to prototyping or exploring, etc., that's fine. But when you really look at getting things in production, then trust becomes critical.
It was so interesting. Just on that last point, we spoke briefly beforehand about liberating experimentation. If you can reduce the cost of experimentation a lot, you can make a huge amount of gains, not just in terms of the knowledge that you therefore have about your organization, but identifying and prioritizing use cases. So maybe we'll go back to that point in a moment. I just wanted to, so if we stick with the idea of scaling, what do you make of what Beatrice has said? Is it different? Is it the same at HSBC when you look across that broad remit? What are the identifiers of your use cases that you're really excited about the scalability of them?
Yeah, so I think it's some of the things we've already mentioned, right? Yeah. Accuracy kind of being the pinnacle of this for generative AI, less so for traditional AI, but you have accuracy, regulatory and legal compliance, and then fairness, accountability, ethics, and transparency. And then you have what we spoke about around data quality, keeping your use cases narrow. And then you have the kind of enablers that really allow you to do this at scale. In the beginning, you should focus, get your 8 or however many use cases to scaled production. But at a certain point, you're also going to want the right governance structures and platforms in place and the continuous model monitoring in a consistent fashion along your large enterprise to be able to do hundreds to thousands of use cases once this gets up and running. I'll come back to what Rodrigo said, because I recognize you said we're not there yet, right? But this idea that you can make investments in technology and you won't see much from them, and at a certain point you'll kind of hit that cliff and everything will be fantastic. I think there are elements to that when it comes to developing infrastructure and the underlying technology capabilities. When it comes to fine-tuning the actual use cases inside an applied enterprise, we're seeing the opposite right now. I'm excited for it to change, but right now we're seeing diminishing marginal returns on the fine-tuning, right? So the first $1,000 you spend, you become 20% more accurate. Right. The next 1,000 you become 2% more accurate, and the next 1,000 you become 0.2% more accurate. And so knowing how much to invest now versus just waiting for GPT-7 to come along, right. When you then compare the new model that's come out compared to an older model that has fine-tuning on it, and then you have to make that reinvestment. Yeah. It's a bit of a chicken and egg. How much do we invest now versus how much do we wait? We want to find the ROI today, but we also don't want to spend tons of capital to have outdated technology given how fast the industry is moving. And so weighing those two is exceptionally important.
I would love to put that directly to you, Rodrigo, but with the addendum of asking about, how do you get your experimentation right so that you're able to make some of the decisions that Ian's just described? Right. When do we accelerate? When do we have to pull back?
Right. I mean, so the two trends that we see, we're based in Palo Alto, and so we just focus on the major trends that we see from the AI companies that are in that region. And so we see two things. One, the models are getting smaller. The smaller models are performing really, really well relative to the bigger models. And so we're seeing that as over time that we're able to achieve similar quality with smaller models, more efficient models. And what Ian just said is exactly true. And one of the things that is a challenge for people is they're thinking, let me just wait. When the perfect model shows up, that's when I get started, right? And I tell people, it's like competing for a marathon. I'm not going to train until the race day. That's never going to work out well. You should start training now, right? And get better every day. And so what we see is the models are getting smaller, and it's changing faster and faster, not because of pure accuracy, but people are doing more things to it. Multimodal, I can combine these things. I can agentic AI, I can create these bots that are very, very specific for certain tasks, and I can glue them together. I can create this composition of experts, or as a composition of experts as a next generation mixture of experts. But if you look at why did we create a platform, Samba 1 is our trailing parameter model. Why did we create a platform that allows us to, in a very modular way, take the latest open source, plug it in, allow you to actually have co-residency with your previous models, because we think people are going to be experimenting in that way. You're going to Llama 3 shows up, plug it in, let me compare it to the Llama 2 that I was using. Is it better, is it worse? Llama 4 showed up, Llama 5, Meta puts another thing out, Mistral 8, whatever. You're constantly going to be experimenting. Is this one better than that? Is this one good for this task? And so the ability to dynamically experiment without having to re-incur the cost, without having to sever your ties to a particular vendor is going to be incredibly important, right? And we do think that the velocity by which new models are going to get created is going to accelerate. The velocity by which the models are going to get better is going to accelerate. The ability to actually take and create use cases that are much more usable. Today they're okay, but I think in a year, the usability of the models out of the box is going to be exponential because you can it just does all the things that I wanted to do, right? And the ability to very quickly be able to take that, plug it into some place that you can use it and use it in a way that is in concert with whatever investment you've made before. Right? Because it's not a point in time. You've already invested in Llama 2 and Llama 3 and Mistral, in fact, whatever models you've used. The ability to do that is incredibly important as part of this journey because experimentation is going to go and you're investing every day. You're investing every day and you don't want to lose that investment that you're making for the next several years.
I'd love to take some questions from the room, but perhaps whilst we think about that and get a microphone here. It feels like not just in this conversation, but in the ones that have preceded it, there's a bit of a theme emerging around sort of microsystems, a reining back in of some of the big sort of maximalist approach that we've seen by hyperscalers in building models to I think Jochen described it as an ensemble of smaller systems that are much more expert. And it would be great to hear potentially from you, Beatrice, and from Ian. Is that the trend that you're seeing? Why do you think that's happening? And what kind of bottlenecks might have led to that? And then I think we've got a question over here. So maybe if you could tell us your thoughts.
I fully agree with that. I think again, this technology is in its infancy, and I think we can compare to previous one. And technology tends to start always like big and expensive and kind of slow. Building a mobile, an iPhone with the technology of the 1980s will have cost like $1 trillion. Right, and we have to buy a computer of the size of the city of London. Just again, so I think we are experiencing, and yes, I totally agree. I think these models will become much more domain focused or industry focused. That's the value again. That's the value of. That's why knowledge becomes so critical and so important. And I truly believe that we'll be moving towards more verticals, and these large language models will. I mean, there'll be a foundational of kind of large language models, but then for the enterprise applications, etc., the majority will run on verticals.
Yeah. Ian, do you want to jump in?
Sure, I'll give a quick comment.
Yeah.
I think small models are definitely where we're headed, and even models that are really good at specific tasks. I think the reason it comes down to this is just the basics of AI safety, right? If you want to have an expert in the loop, if you want to have systems that have the performance and accuracy that's needed to deliver use cases inside financial services, you need to keep those use cases narrow, at least in the beginning, right? This is a new technology that we're all experimenting and learning from together, and we shouldn't pretend that this has been around for 2 decades and start to put it widely at the hands of many different use cases that don't have the right performance and accuracy testing. So super important to focus on.
Yeah, fantastic. So do you want to tell us where you're from, who you are?
It's Hakan. I'm from City. I'm leading the user experience for commercial and client, where is onboarding and etc. I wanted to ask, like I have heard this in the past 6 months or 1 year quite a lot, AI use cases. In product development lifecycle, we usually empathize, we try to understand the problem, prototype the solution, and validate the business value by testing the prototype with actual users and then invest in it. Is there an opportunity that we could apply the same for AI use cases so that we don't really, our AI outputs don't become a solution to the problems that shouldn't exist in the first place, or they are not solutions to a fraction of the actual problem? How do we, can we like reuse that framework or something like that?
Well, I'll go back to the first thing that I was talking about. I do think that there are two pieces to it. There's a use case creation model that is very, very much one that we've done for years as far as the value creation. There's a lot of work that products that we should have never created, right? AI is going to have similar trends for some applications that we create that just really don't generate value. And I still believe that right now, there's still a portion of your business where you're laying down fiber, right? And this is the question for you. It's like, if you don't do the work to lay down fiber. So imagine 25 years ago, what's the ROI of laying down all this fiber in your company? How do I calculate the immediate ROI? And if you didn't do it, you don't have a connected world today. Right? And so I still believe that there is a big part of the work that for your company is trying to figure out what is the foundation for AI. I want all of my people to be AI enabled, and as the applications get created over time, they should tap into some base foundation for how I have safety, I have verification, I have certification, I can regulate, all the things that you want, and the data that I'm using is all consistent. That's all investment that's going to see value down the line, and there's a portion of work that has to be done for that today for almost every company in this room.
And yeah, sorry, please, yeah, go.
No, just one comment to add. I will encourage. I don't think we have talked enough, but on that product lifecycle creation, use synthetic data. That's something we have today. We didn't have before. Use synthetic data to test some of the hypotheses. I think that can be of huge help.
I think has Gen AI broken the conventional proof of concept loop?
No, I mean, I opened up today saying we should stop talking about AI and start talking about customers, right? So it's the product development lifecycle. We need to focus on what are the problems that we're trying to solve. And sometimes AI will be a tool to help deliver value to customers, and sometimes it won't. But if we stay laser focused on delivering value to our customers, we're good.
I think that's a good point to end on. We've run a little bit over, so thanks so much for listening. Thank you to Rodrigo and to Sam Manova, to Beatrice and to Ian. Thank you. Terrific. Yeah,
Thank you.
That's great.